I don't know why they do this, why the press is always there when he's getting on like a helicopter or a jet, because the sound is always awful. There's no way to separate it out as an editor. Like, there's no way to separate it out. It's just always going to sound terrible. So I don't know why the press, I guess, is just trying to shout questions. They can be very craven like that. But, and, that's their job and whatever. But I'm saying, like, it's just, as an editor or a listener, it's annoying as hell to hear that the engines in the background. But he's on his way down to Alligator Auschwitz. And first of all, the other clips from this, when he's asked about it, is like, I think it's Peter Ducey actually asked like, where, so is the plan that if anyone tries to escape, they're going to get eaten by alligators? And Trump's like, yes, that's the plan. Basically, it's Auschwitz. They're calling it Alcatraz because they're saying there's only one road in and one flight out, like she said, right? That's their marketing thing. Disgusting. But she goes, or he goes, like, it's very unforgiving. Like, that's what she said, right? It's very unforgiving territory and landscape around there. So don't bother trying to escape, and we'll send you off to El Salvador soon enough. But just the idea that Trump thinks that alligators are just going to, like, this is a fucking castle. It's just going to eat. It's just going to eat people. Like, they can't run away from an alligator. You can run away from an alligator. They're pretty fast, but like in short bursts. And, if you're breaking out of prison, you're going to be going pretty fast, I would imagine. And also snakes. He threw in snakes there. But anyways, this is when he's asked about Zohran Mamdani. And I was tickled when I was working earlier what he says here.
We need is a communist. I said there will not Zohran Mamdani having such a hard time.
See the audio.
I think he's terrible. He's a communist. The last thing we need is a communist. I said there will never be socialism in the United States. Now we have a communist. So I think he's bad news. And I think I'm going to have a lot of fun with him, watching him, because he has to come right to this building to get his money. And don't worry, he's not going to run away with anything. I think he's, frankly, I've heard he's a total nut job. I think the people of New York are crazy. If they go this route, I think they're crazy. We will have a communist for the first time, really, a pure, true communist. He wants to operate the grocery stores, the department stores. What about the people that are there? I think it's crazy.
All right. So that's what he had to say about Zohran. I want to address a couple of things in the chat. First of all, Rich P with some historical facts. Closing Alcatraz was a historical milestone because it was supposed to represent leaving the more brutal behavior of the past. At least it was supposed to. That's correct. That's why it was closed. I didn't go there, but the one time I was in San Francisco to visit my uncle, I saw it, right? When we were looking over the Golden Gate Bridge, you could see it. And it is spooky thinking about like how brutal it must have been in there. I also wanted to bring up another comment. The Gulf of America hat. First of all, it's hilarious. I love the big font hats that he has. Sam Cedar should put out a even bigger font Max like for old people who can't read this, because that's why the hats are like that, by the way. Just the insane, the communist stuff. First of all, he doesn't know what the difference between a socialist and a communist. And why would he? When 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s America was conflating the two, villainizing, demonizing these concepts for, decades, over a century, probably, going back all the way to Marx and Lenin when they were alive. It just doesn't ring for people our age anymore. I'm grouping everybody who's watching here, okay? because yeah, there's some older people where it's like still a scary word. There's some older people who were hippies and were like, no, I was a communist back in the 60s and 70s. Like, this is not scary to me. But to people, I don't know, my age, you know, which I'm not going to say, by the way, I'm about 3 million years old. I'm an eldritch beast, if you haven't noticed. I am the devil's advocate, literally. So I am epochs old. So, and you'll understand this when it comes to my takes, too. My music takes and my technological prowess or lack thereof. But the reason I think Zohran won, and I want to see if I can pull up this graph. Primary, I want to see turnout by age, because they brought this up in Majority Report and it was really, really good. Images. Hey, look, I found it. I'm smart. Post not found. Goddamn. Where is it? There we go. Okay. Let's take a look at this graph. Look at this graph. Oh, jeez. Whoopsies. That was the Google search for the graph. This is the graph. There we go. Okay. So in 2021, 18 to 35, let's say, was this is by 100,000, by 1,000 voters, so 50,000, right? A little under 50,000. 2025, well over 50, about 75,000. And then 25 to 30, even to 40 almost, is like almost 100,000. So whatever strategy the Democrats have been looking for in the post-election era of how do we get young men, how do we get young people, how do we get non-frequent voters to get excited about candidates, how do we get candidates who are exciting, this is the roadmap. Literally, this is the roadmap. Bernie Sanders said it on some morning show. Hey, I might have tweeted it actually. Get on board. He just did the thing you've been asking for not only just since the election, but since Obama in 2008. How do we get those numbers back? Well, you shouldn't have dismantled the entire infrastructure that you had built around Obama. That would have been a helpful thing to do. You should have not pushed the left away. You should have not bailed out the banks instead of the homeowners. You should have, a lot of shoulda, woulda, coulda. Should have ended the war earlier. But just the rabid hatred that they're coming at Zohran with is just kind of hilarious to me.